I exposed my sister's affair, Mom covered it, I told the groom, wedding cancelled overnight for truth. I still wake up with the image in my head, a single frame that won't let me forget. It was one of those ordinary afternoons that promised nothing and delivered a private earthquake. I had gone to Karen's office to finish a few things for her surprise birthday at work. We'd planned every detail with her coworkers, and my mom was supposed to keep her busy that evening. I thought I was doing something loving. Instead, I walked into a truth that rearranged everything I thought I knew about my sister. My name is Andrea, and right now I'm stuck between loyalty and honesty, between protecting someone I love and protecting someone I respect. Karen is older than me, and for years she felt like my north, confident, steady, the kind of sister I wanted to imitate. She met Esteban before I even knew what forever sounded like. When she introduced him, he fit into our family the way pieces of a puzzle suddenly do, natural, warm, and steady. We all loved him. I loved him. Watching them together felt like watching something meant to last. That's why what I saw hurt so much. I didn't hear a dramatic noise when I entered. There was no confrontation, no cinematic moment with slammed doors or shouted accusations. What I found was Karen in her office with a man I didn't recognize. They were close, too close for them to be just friends. My first instinct was disbelief. My second was to walk away, to leave and pretend I had seen nothing. I went home instead, because panic doesn't come with an instruction manual, and my mind was a looping tape of questions I couldn't answer. For days nothing made sense. I replayed that hallway, the files on her desk, the way her jacket lay over the chair. I thought about the engagement ring on her finger, about the small private moment when Esteban proposed, a quiet celebration that felt like proof of all the promises people make. That night I called my mom because I didn't know where else to put the secret. I needed someone to witness it with me, to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. When I told her, her face didn't contort with surprise. Instead it tightened with something else. A kind of tired, protective concern. She told me she already knew. She said she'd noticed changes in Karen for months, that she had confronted her, and that Karen had begged her not to tell Esteban. My mother, who always used love as a shield, had chosen silence. For months she had been the one holding the secret, and suddenly I was expected to do the same. I remember the way all the air left my throat. I felt smaller, like an unwilling participant in a family plan I had never signed up for. My mother's plea was simple. Don't say anything. Keep it inside. Let them be. She asked it like it was a kindness, as if protecting Karen would somehow preserve what mattered. It felt wrong. It felt like betrayal of a different kind. Esteban is someone I've come to admire, honest, generous, the sort of man who built trust slowly and kept it. He's been my friend, and worse, my compass for what a good partner can be. The idea that he might be living under a lie makes my bones ache. I can't eat properly, I can't focus at work, and every time Karen's wedding talk comes up, I feel that cold heat in my chest. They're planning, picking flowers, folding napkins, making lists. My mom smooths over details at family gatherings like nothing is out of balance, and everyone smiles as if the future is secure. I keep asking myself when to act. Do I confront Karen and demand she tell Esteban? Do I go to Esteban and shatter his world for the sake of truth? Or do I accept the role my mother chose for me and stay silent? Each option feels heavy and morally complicated. I think about the day Karen asked my mom not to say anything. I try to imagine her pleading behind closed doors, and for a while I felt like I understood her, like maybe fear had made her cling to what she had. But sympathy wears thin when you realize what the secret costs someone else. Sometimes I flash back to my own history. I had a boyfriend once who cheated on me, and the way it hollowed out my sense of self still hurts. I remember the nights reading messages I shouldn't have seen, the shame, the anger that followed. That pain taught me something about the cost of secrets and the way silence can compound damage. Holding this knowledge inside now makes me feel like I'm betraying my past self, who swore never to let someone else carry that weight alone. I haven't confronted Karen about what I saw. Not yet. Maybe part of me is protecting the memory of who she was to me, the sister who taught me how to mix colors for a painting, who once stayed up helping me study when I panicked before an exam. Maybe part of me is simply afraid of what confrontation brings. Or maybe I'm giving my mother too much credit for being the keeper of family peace. Her reasoning is wrapped in love, sure, but it's also wrapped in fear. Fear of disrupting a life that seems to be on rails. There are moments when I almost tell Esteban. I imagine sitting across from him and watching his face change as truth settles in. I imagine gratitude, anguish, a strange relief. But I also imagine the way everything would fall apart, how a man I consider a friend would be forced to rebuild his life from pieces. I don't know which version of that future is less cruel. At night I make lists of what rightness actually is. Is it better to preserve someone's happiness at the cost of another's truth? Is it better to expose the lie and accept the fallout? Morally, the path feels clear. Honesty should win. Practically, consequences aren't that simple. My mother keeps telling me that people make mistakes and that love sometimes looks like protection. But protection for whom? For Karen, for Esteban, or for the family's reputation? Recently, Karen's behavior has shifted in ways that are impossible to ignore. She avoids rooms when Esteban enters, she takes late work calls, and loses herself in errands. Sometimes she looks at Esteban and then away as if watching someone she no longer recognizes. I can see the strain. I can read the guilt in the creases by her eyes. It's like living with a constant tremor. Everything seems fine, but under the surface something is cracking. The closer her birthday came, the more the plan to surprise her felt like an act of normalcy in a house that suddenly didn't fit right anymore. Helping her coworkers set up, pinning notes, whispering about cake flavors. It all felt ridiculous because my brain kept returning to that office, that hallway, that impossible image. I wanted to celebrate her because I wanted to believe none of this was true. I wanted to rewrite the afternoon as a misunderstanding I had magnified. But the image is stubborn. I watch Karen on the phone with wedding vendors, and I feel an odd dissonance. She's planning a future with a man she loves, or at least once loved, while carrying a secret that could undo everything. She's always been someone who thought about consequences. Now it seems like consequences are driving her away. She confides in my mother, not in me, and the knowledge that my mother is complicit sits like a stone in my stomach. I've tried to keep myself busy, organizing details for the party, calling guests, or scrolling through old photos until nostalgia dulls the sharp edges. It helps in small doses, but then a memory triggers, a laugh, a perfume, the way Esteban looked at Karen last month when he thought no one watched, and I'm pulled back into that unsettling present. I've begun to dread family dinners because each calm conversation feels like a thin veneer over something volatile. Lately, guilt has been my constant companion. I feel guilty for knowing and not speaking. I feel guilty for loving Karen and simultaneously wishing she would be honest. Most of all, I feel guilty for keeping faith with my mother when my moral compass points elsewhere. It's a perverse tangle, love and truth in the same knotted rope. I don't know how this ends. The wedding date is approaching quietly, as if the calendar is an accomplice. Sometimes I rehearse an intervention in my head, a calm sit-down with Karen where I speak plainly, where tears are shed and apologies are made. Other times I imagine standing outside Esteban's house, telling him everything without context and watching the consequences roll out like waves. Both scenes make me queasy, but the second one tastes like the only honest option. For now, I write this like a diary because writing is the only place I can be unfiltered. It feels safer to turn my jumble of thoughts into sentences than to let them sit like a bruise. If anything, keeping a record helps me remember who I am beneath the panic, a sister who once trusted, who once admired, and who now struggles to reconcile loyalty with justice. I don't have answers. I have fragments, memories, and moral questions that won't stay quiet. But I do know one thing. Silence is a decision too, and it's starting to feel like one I didn't consent to. So I keep watching, keeping score in the smallest ways I can. The tone of her voice, the way her eyes dodge conversations, the tiny rituals that add up to the person I thought I knew. This is the beginning of a story I never wanted to tell, but it's also mine. I don't know the final chapter yet. For now, I am a witness with a secret, and the weight of that secret is changing who I am. A few days ago I walked into Karen's office and saw her with another man. I told Mom because I couldn't carry it alone, and she told me she'd known for months and had agreed to keep it secret. Now I'm left with a truth everyone else seems determined to ignore, and the guilt of knowing something that could destroy 2 lives. Karen's movements feel jagged now, like a song missing notes. She avoids rooms where Esteban sits, answers phone calls with the nervous quickness people use when they're rehearsing lies, and sometimes freezes mid-sentence as if tamping down whatever she knows will spill out. At family dinners she picks at her food and stares at the tablecloth, as if there's a map there she can't read. Every time I see that look I want to reach across and grab her hand and ask, "What are you doing?" It is worse when it's just the three of us, Karen, Mom, and me. Mom has become a diplomat whose only export is silence. She watches Karen like a parent tending a fever, eyes narrowed and jaw tight, and when Karen admits a flicker of worry, Mom smooths it away with the same phrase she used the day I told her, "We can handle this without hurting the rest of the family." Only now Karen's admissions carry a different weight. One afternoon she held my mother's hands and said, "I can't keep pretending." My mother answered with a plea to preserve the wedding, to keep the family whole, to avoid scandal. Hearing that made my stomach drop. I wanted to barge in and tell them both that living a half-truth hurts those who did not choose it. But fear makes you small. I stayed where I was, listening and cataloging every line as if I were collecting evidence. Afterward, Karen left without looking at me. She hugged Mom a little too long and then walked out the door. I imagined every step as a step away from the person I knew. Later that night I replayed the incident like an edited film, watching my own hesitation until it became its own kind of weight. I see signs of her guilt everywhere, a lipstick mark on a napkin she discards, late-night texts from unknown numbers that she answers in the bathroom, an extra set of keys left on the counter. Small things that people who are lying tend to forget are also evidence. While these discoveries harden my resolve, they also make me feel complicit for having noticed and not acted sooner. At work my mind cleaves in two, the tasks at hand and the scenes I cannot stop replaying. During meetings I imagine who the other man could be, colleague, stranger, someone from a past life she never mentioned. Each possibility feels worse than the last. The strangest thing is that I still see flashes of the girl I grew up with, the one who braided my hair, who made me soup when I had the flu, who taught me how to be brave in small ways. Those memories combat the current reality. I think back to my own experience with betrayal. The man who cheated on me did not destroy us in one grand gesture. It began with phone calls that ended when I entered the room, with sudden work trips that stretched on, with unfamiliar scents on his jacket. Denial felt like a bomb at first. You tell yourself a story where everything will be fine. But denial is also a slow poison. Remembering that hurt has become my compass. It tells me that silence compounds pain. Deciding to act is messy and human, not righteous or clean. I start keeping a small notebook where I jot times and descriptions of suspicious things, not to build a case for revenge, but because writing organizes the chaos in my head. The notebook turns what I know into something concrete instead of a pounding, amorphous fear. It feels like a compass, but following it could uproot everything. I speak aloud in the car sometimes, the way people do when they need to hear their own voice agree with them. "You can't let this go on," I tell myself. "You have to tell him." Doubt answers back immediately. What if you're wrong? What if you misread things? Doubt is persistent. I replay the moment in Karen's office, searching for proof I could not have invented. The image remains clear, but second-guessing hangs on. Esteban notices the strain too. He asks Karen small questions that pull at her patience. "Is everything okay at work? You seem tired lately." When she deflects, he laughs it off, but worry grows on his face. Once, at a family brunch, he paused and asked me, "Are you close with her at work? Does she seem different?" I answered automatically, "We work together sometimes for events," which was true but incomplete. My throat burned afterward. I felt like I had lied by omission. I dream of telling Esteban directly. In the dream I am composed and rational. I lay out the facts, show him the notebook, and he thanks me for sparing him the pain of ignorance. We hug awkwardly and move on. Waking up, the dream falls apart because reality is rarely tidy. The potential damage feels like a tear in fabric that could widen into an unraveling wardrobe. After a tense Sunday, I find Karen sitting on the back steps, face hollow and hands cramped as if she had been holding something too tight. I sit beside her without speaking. Sometimes silence is the only form of communion left when people lose ground to fear. She lets out a laugh that is almost a sob. "I thought keeping it a secret would make things easier," she says finally. "But it's worse. I feel like I'm living two lives." I ask if she is going to tell Esteban. At first she answers with fragile hope. "I want to, Andrea. I really do. But Mom," she does not finish. I know the rest. Mom worries about the wedding, the shame, the fallout. "She's terrified," Karen admits. She thinks telling him will ruin everything. I think about how people rationalize protection. My mother believes the cost of revelation is too high. She imagines collapse. But silence is not a gift. It is a choice that often benefits the secret keeper more than the person deceived. If Karen is too scared to act, what is my responsibility as someone who knows? The moral lines tangle. One night I compose a message to Esteban and delete it before sending. The text reads, "We need to talk. Can we meet?" Deleting it feels like swallowing a scream. Why do I hesitate? Fear, loyalty, compassion. The line between what feels ethical and what feels merciful keeps shifting under my feet. I keep watching Karen. She is afraid, but sometimes she laughs in that way that makes me think of old times. Secret handshakes and jokes only sisters understand. Those moments make acting harder. Love does not evaporate just because someone fails. People are contradictory. My actions could not only reveal the deception but possibly break the person I once admired. That thought terrifies me but does not absolve me. Every day the wedding date edges closer, and the house that once felt safe becomes charged. I am less and less able to be neutral. The decision feels less like a moral puzzle and more like a test of who I want to be. Do I value honesty enough to endure the fallout? Or do I bury the truth to protect a temporary peace built on sand? The next morning I wake determined. The notebook is in my bag and my phone is charged. I tell myself today I will talk to someone who deserves the truth. I do not yet know whether that someone will be Karen or Esteban. For the first time in days, a line of resolve cuts through the fog. I discovered that Karen, my sister, has been cheating on her fiancé Esteban. Mom already knew and begged me to stay silent. Since then, Karen has grown restless and guilty, while Esteban has started noticing her strange behavior. I've carried this secret like a stone in my chest, remembering my own betrayal in the past, and now I know I can't keep silent forever. I feel a line of resolve forming. Someone needs to know the truth, and I might be the one to deliver it. I finally reached my breaking point. The morning light came through my window, and I realized I couldn't keep living with the weight pressing down on me. I texted Esteban, "Can we meet for lunch at my place? Just us." My hands shook as I pressed send. For a second I considered throwing my phone across the room, but the message had already flown. When he arrived, he brought that same warmth he always carried, but I could see suspicion flicker in his eyes. We sat at the table, food untouched, silence stretching. I started with an apology, for the delay, for the silence, for being part of something I didn't agree with. Then I told him. I told him what I saw, what Mom had known, how Karen had begged her not to say anything. Words poured out like a dam breaking, and once it started, I couldn't stop. Esteban sat motionless, staring at the table. Then he covered his face with both hands. I had never seen him break before. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He just cried, quietly at first, then harder, like someone realizing the floor beneath them was gone. Through his tears he said, thank you for telling me. I don't know what I'll do, but at least now I know the truth." He left soon after without finishing his food, his figure shrinking as he walked away from my house. I wanted to run after him, to fix what couldn't be fixed, but instead I sat there in silence, feeling both lighter and hollow. The next day Karen stormed home in tears. She shouted that Esteban had ended things, that the wedding was off. She collapsed into Mom's arms, sobbing like a child. Mom stroked her hair and whispered comfort, as if the world had betrayed her, not the other way around. I stood frozen, unsure what to say, shocked that Karen didn't turn her fury on me. Later that evening, Karen came into my room, still red-eyed and broken, and confessed everything. She admitted the affair, admitted that Esteban had left, admitted she didn't understand how her life had collapsed so fast. She never suspected I had told him. She thought Esteban had followed her one day and discovered the truth on his own. She said he had told her he noticed her behavior, that he had seen enough to know she was unfaithful. After she left my room, I sent Esteban a message. I asked if he had told her it was me. He replied quickly, "No. I told her I figured it out myself. I didn't want you to get caught in this. I owe you too much." Reading that, I felt a kind of gratitude that hurt. Even in his own heartbreak, He thought to protect me. Now the house is different. Karen is shattered, Mom is exhausted, and I feel, strangely still. The guilt I carried for weeks has lifted, not because things ended well, but because the truth is no longer trapped inside me. Esteban is gone. He said he needed to leave, maybe for good, maybe forever. I don't feel joy. Watching my sister collapse is painful. But there's a grim honesty in knowing she faces the consequences of her choices. For once, the silence isn't mine to carry anymore. This isn't the ending I wanted, but it's the one we all earned. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Thanks for your attention.